A 7-year-old African girl was left on a snake-infested mountain by her father. But an Arab executive saw her, and imagine being just 7 years old, abandoned by your own father, left alone on a cold, rocky mountain where venomous snakes slither between the stones. The night falls fast, the air grows colder, and every sound feels like danger creeping closer. No one knows you're there. No one, except for one man who just happened to be passing by at the right, or maybe wrong moment. He wasn't just any man. He was a powerful Arab executive, a billionaire used to luxury, control, and never stepping out of his comfort zone. But what he saw that day changed his life forever. What made this man stop his car on a deserted mountain road? Why did he climb out in the dark, risking his own life to search the rocks? And how did this innocent little girl, left to die by her own blood, end up breaking through the icy walls around his heart? Before we dive into this shocking and emotional story, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. We bring you powerful, inspiring stories like this one every week, and your support helps us reach more people with these life-changing moments. Zara's small hands trembled as she clutched the rough edges of the cold rocks beneath her. The mountains stretched endlessly around her like a silent graveyard, covered with loose stones and patches of dry grass. The air smelled of dust and something else, something she couldn't name but felt deep in her bones. Danger. Her bare feet were bruised and bleeding. The torn hem of her yellow dress fluttered in the wind, a splash of faded color against the dull gray of the rocks. Her father's angry voice still echoed in her mind. Hours earlier, without warning, he had driven her to this remote place, pulled her out of the car, and yelled at her to stay put. When she cried and begged him not to leave, he didn't even look back. The sound of the engine disappearing down the mountain road was the last thing she heard before silence swallowed her whole. Now, as darkness settled in, Zara's eyes darted from shadow to shadow. Every small movement made her heart jump. She had seen snakes before, dead ones by the roadside or curled up near the village well, but never like this. Here they were everywhere. Glossy black shapes slithering between rocks, tongues flicking out, searching. She curled into a ball, burying her face in her knees, trying not to cry too loudly. The tears felt hot against her dusty skin. Her stomach ached with hunger, and her throat burned with thirst. The fear was so thick, it felt like she couldn't breathe. Down below, a sleek black SUV cut through the winding mountain road. Inside, Karim Al-Fahad gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The Dubai-based executive wasn't supposed to be here. A last-minute change in his flight plans had forced him to drive through this isolated part of Africa, heading toward the nearest airstrip where his private jet waited. Karim wasn't a man who believed in fate. His world revolved around logic, schedules, and control. Multi-million-dollar deals, Back-to-back board meetings, the kind of life where every second was accounted for and every decision made for profit. He had no time for emotion or surprises. But tonight, something gnawed at him. As he drove along the narrow, twisting path, his headlights caught something unusual on the side of the road, a flash of yellow moving near the rocks. At first, he thought it was just plastic debris, maybe a bag caught in the wind. But as the car drew closer, the shape became clearer. A child. His heart skipped. Without thinking, Karim hit the brakes. The tires screeched against the gravel. Dust rose in thick clouds, coating the SUV's windshield. He switched on the hazard lights, quickly stepping out of the car. The cool night air hit his face like a slap. He scanned the area, focusing on the small, trembling figure halfway up the slope. "Hello?" he called out, his voice low but urgent. The little girl didn't answer. She only pulled her knees tighter to her chest, her small body shaking. Karim hesitated. Every logical part of his brain screamed at him to get back in the car. This wasn't his problem. He had a jet to catch, business partners waiting, a full schedule for the next 2 weeks. But something deeper, something he hadn't felt in years, held him frozen in place. As he stepped closer, the beam from his flashlight fell across the ground. That's when he saw them. At least 3 snakes, coiled and moving near the rocks where she sat. Karim's breath caught. One wrong step from the child, and it would be over. "Don't move," he said firmly, stepping forward. But at that moment, one of the snakes raised its head, its body curling tighter, ready to strike. Karim didn't think. Instinct took over. He grabbed a nearby stick, lunging toward the snake with a force that surprised even him. The snake recoiled, disappearing quickly into the rocks. The others followed, slithering away like black rivers of shadow. Kneeling down, he reached out to the girl. "You're safe now," he whispered, though he wasn't sure she believed it, or even understood his words. Her wide, terrified eyes met his for the first time, and in that single, heart-wrenching glance, Karim Al-Fahad knew. His life had just changed forever. Karim stood frozen, still crouched in the dust beside the trembling girl. The adrenaline from facing the snake still pumped through his veins. He wasn't used to this, getting his clothes dirty, feeling fear in his throat, kneeling in the dirt for anyone. Yet here he was, heart pounding like a drum. The little girl didn't say a word. Her eyes, dark and wide, stayed locked on him as if she wasn't sure if he was real or just another nightmare. "Where's your family?" he asked softly. No answer. Karim glanced at the road. His SUV sat there with the engine still running, lights cutting through the night. The clock on the dashboard had warned him minutes ago. If he didn't get moving soon, he'd miss his jet. But that felt irrelevant now. He pulled out his phone, trying to get a signal. Nothing. Of course, This was one of the most isolated stretches of land for miles. Frustration prickled at him. This wasn't part of his plan. He had spent years building a life where every decision was calculated, every risk managed, and now one little girl had thrown it all into chaos. "Come on, we can't stay here," he murmured, standing up and brushing dust off his pants. With slow, hesitant movements, he reached out a hand. For a long, painful second, she just stared at it. Then, almost mechanically, she placed her tiny fingers in his. Her skin was ice cold. Karim scooped her up in one swift motion, carrying her carefully down the rocky slope toward his SUV. She weighed almost nothing. It felt like holding a fragile bird, all bones and fear. Sliding into the driver's seat with her bundled in his lap, he adjusted the heating controls, trying to push warm air toward her shivering body. "I'll get you somewhere safe," he whispered, though the words sounded strange coming from his own mouth. As he drove down the winding road, questions spiraled in his mind. Where was her family? Why had she been left here? Was someone looking for her? Or worse, hoping no one would find her? They passed through a small village 20 minutes later, a cluster of dusty brick houses with broken windows and dirt paths. Karim pulled over near a faded sign that read, "Health Outpost." But the place was dark and clearly abandoned. He cursed under his breath. This wasn't working. The girl stirred in the passenger seat, her head lolling against the door. He reached over to gently shake her. "Hey, stay awake. What's your name?" Finally, a whisper. "Amira." The name barely left her lips before her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. Panic surged through Karim like a wildfire. He checked her pulse. Weak, but there. Without wasting another second, he pressed hard on the gas pedal, sending the SUV flying down the road. His destination was now the nearest hospital, even if that meant hours of driving through bad terrain. Halfway there, his phone buzzed. Finally, a weak signal. Quickly, Karim dialed one of his most trusted contacts, Omar, his head of personal security and logistics. "Omar, I need immediate medical evacuation. Coordinates incoming. It's urgent. Child in critical condition." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, did you say a child?" "Yes, and don't ask questions. Just make it happen." Within minutes, Karim heard back. A helicopter was on its way. As the low rumble of rotor blades filled the air, Karim pulled over into a clearing. Dust and dirt blasted through the trees as the chopper descended. Medics rushed toward him, carefully lifting Amira from the passenger seat. Karim followed, heart pounding, climbing into the helicopter beside her. As they lifted off, Karim's eyes stayed locked on her small face. pale, fragile, fighting for each breath. He didn't know why, but something deep inside him whispered that this wasn't just a rescue. This was the start of something bigger, something that would turn his entire world upside down. He pulled out his phone again, staring at the list of missed business calls, urgent emails, and text messages waiting for him. For the first time in years, he didn't care. His priority now was her. The helicopter cut across the dark African sky like a blade of light. Inside, Karim sat stiffly, eyes glued to the small, unconscious figure lying on the stretcher beside him. The medical team worked quickly, checking her vitals, inserting an IV, and wrapping her in warm blankets to fight the hypothermia. Karim's clothes were still dusty from the mountain, but he hardly noticed. His mind raced through questions with no answers. Who leaves a child like this? Who abandons their daughter on a mountain swarming with snakes? The flight felt endless, though it lasted barely 40 minutes. When they landed at a private hospital on the outskirts of Nairobi, a team of doctors rushed to receive Amira. Karim followed close behind, ignoring the hospital administrator, who asked for insurance papers and legal documents. "Put it all on my account," Karim snapped, pulling out a sleek black credit card that bore his company's logo. "She gets whatever she needs. No delays." Inside the intensive care unit, monitors beeped steadily as Amira lay motionless, her small chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The doctors worked on stabilizing her body temperature and starting treatment for dehydration and shock. Karim paced the hallway like a caged lion. Hours passed. Morning light began to creep through the hospital windows, painting the walls in soft gold. Finally, a young doctor with kind eyes approached him. "She's stable for now," the doctor said gently. "Severe dehydration, malnutrition, exposure, and she has several old bruises, some that don't seem accidental." Karim froze. "Are you saying—" The doctor nodded, hesitating. "I can't say for sure without further examination, but she's been through more than just one bad night on a mountain." Anger surged through Karim like lava. His fists clenched at his sides. He didn't know this girl. He hadn't even known her name 24 hours ago. But the thought that someone had hurt her burned in his chest like fire. By the time he stepped into her hospital room, Amira's eyes were open, but she didn't speak. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling with an emptiness no 7-year-old should ever wear. Karim pulled up a chair beside her bed. "Amira," he said softly, keeping his voice low and gentle. "I need to find your family. Can you tell me their names? Where they live?" Her eyes flickered toward him, but she said nothing. He tried again. "Do you have a mother? Brothers? Anyone?" Still, no answer. Frustration tugged at him, but he kept it hidden. This wasn't about him. So, he changed tactics. "Do you like stories?" he asked. "When I was a boy, my grandfather used to tell me stories about brave people who survived terrible things, and how their courage made them stronger than anyone thought possible." For a split second, something almost like curiosity flickered in her eyes. He leaned in closer. "Would you like me to tell you one?" Silence. But this time, she blinked slowly, as if saying yes without words. So Karim told her about a boy who got lost in the desert, and how he fought to find his way home, facing snakes, storms, and fear. By the end of the story, Amira's eyes had softened. She didn't smile, but she didn't turn away either. Later that afternoon, Omar arrived at the hospital with freshly pressed clothes for Karim and a detailed report in his hands. "We found the car she was left in," Omar said in a low voice, standing in the hallway outside Amira's room. "Abandoned 3 miles from the mountain, no license plates, and no sign of the driver." Karim's jaw tightened. "Any idea who her father is?" "We checked with local police. No missing child reports. No one seems to be looking for her." The words felt like a punch. Karim stared through the glass window into Amira's room, watching her small frame curled beneath the hospital blanket. Who was this child? Why had no one come for her? And why did he feel like she'd been placed in his path for a reason? A knock on the hospital door interrupted his thoughts. A government official stood there, holding a clipboard and wearing a stern expression. "We need to talk," the man said, "about the girl." Karim's heart sank, and in that moment, he knew. This was just the beginning. Karim stood facing the government official, muscles tense, mind racing. The man's badge read, "Child Welfare Services, Nairobi District." His suit was wrinkled, as though he'd been dragged from bed at dawn, but his voice carried the firm, no-nonsense tone of someone used to dealing with emergencies and bureaucracy. "We've been informed," the official began, flipping through papers on his clipboard, "that you transported an unidentified minor to this hospital without contacting local authorities. You've made medical decisions on her behalf without legal guardianship." Karim crossed his arms tightly over his chest. "I didn't have time to wait for red tape while she was dying on a mountain full of snakes." The official barely blinked. "I understand your concern, sir, but we have protocols for a reason. We need to know where this child came from. We also need to investigate how she ended up abandoned in that location." Karim shot a glance through the window at Amira. She was sleeping again, IV lines feeding into her tiny arm, oxygen tube taped just beneath her nose. The thought of some stranger pulling her out of this hospital room, placing her into some crowded, poorly run government facility, made his stomach twist. "She's not going anywhere," Karim said firmly. The official's expression hardened. "Sir, unless you're her legal guardian, you have no authority here." Karim stepped closer, lowering his voice but sharpening the edge in his words. "Do you know who I am?" The man didn't flinch. A wealthy businessman with no legal ties to this girl. Karim inhaled sharply through his nose, suppressing the surge of frustration. Money had always opened doors for him, smoothed over complications. But this was different. Omar appeared at his side like a shadow, holding his phone up. "Sir, I've just spoken with your legal team. They're preparing emergency paperwork, guardianship petitions, whatever it takes." The official sighed. "You can't just buy custody, Mr. Al-Fahad. There's a legal process, background checks, investigations, social worker evaluations." Karim's voice dropped to a low, dangerous tone. "Then start the process. I'm not leaving her side." The official nodded reluctantly. "We'll begin with questions, starting with you." For the next hour, Karim answered everything they threw at him. Where had he found her? What time? What condition was she in? Did she say anything about her family? Karim kept his answers clear and controlled, giving just enough information without opening unnecessary doors for interference. After the interview, the official stood. "For now, she stays here under medical observation. But be aware, if her family comes forward, or if we discover any legal violations, you'll be held responsible." Karim didn't respond. He waited for the man to leave, then turned back to the window where Amira still slept. Omar, standing beside him, finally spoke. "Sir, there's more." Karim stiffened. "What is it?" "We did a sweep of missing persons databases across nearby regions. Nothing came up under her name. But there is one troubling report." Omar handed him a tablet. A local news story appeared on the screen. A recent article from a neighboring town. Local man arrested for child trafficking allegations. Several children unaccounted for. Karim's heart stopped. Beneath the headline was a grainy photo of a middle-aged man with cold eyes. The same man Karim had seen driving away on the mountain. "The authorities believe he's responsible for selling or abandoning several children," Omar said, voice low. "There's a chance Amira was one of them." Karim's fists clenched at his sides. The thought that this girl, already so broken and fragile, had been part of something so vile filled him with fury. "I want full background checks. Find out everything about that man. His known associates, his movements over the last month," Karim ordered. Omar nodded. "Already on it." Later that evening, as Karim finally sat beside Amira's bed again, she opened her eyes. This time, there was something new in them. Fear, but also a flicker of trust. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she reached out a small hand and rested it against his sleeve. Karim froze, heart catching in his throat. Her touch was feather light, but the meaning behind it weighed more than gold. He covered her hand with his own, squeezing gently. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. But deep down he knew, Forces much bigger than both of them were already in motion. And soon, someone dangerous would come looking for her. The following morning, Karim sat in his hotel suite, pacing by the tall glass windows that overlooked the Nairobi skyline. His tailored suit hung forgotten over the back of a chair, and a half-empty cup of black coffee sat cold on the table. He hadn't slept, not a single hour. Omar entered quietly, holding a thick folder of papers. "Sir, we have a problem." Karim stopped pacing. "What now?" Omar placed the folder on the table and opened it, revealing crime scene photos, police reports, and witness statements. "The man we believe abandoned Amira on the mountain. His name is Faisal Okoth. He's already out on bail. The charges for child trafficking. They were dropped last week due to lack of evidence." Karim's stomach twisted. "Lack of evidence? After everything they found?" Omar nodded grimly. "And now that her picture was entered into the government system, Faisal has been notified that she's alive and in a hospital under your care." Karim's blood ran cold. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, his phone buzzed violently on the table. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. A slow, greasy voice oozed through the speaker. "Mr. Al-Fahad, how generous of you to care for my little girl. She's quite special, isn't she?" Karim's entire body stiffened. "If you come near her." Faisal laughed. The sound was low and full of menace. "Relax, Mr. Billionaire. I'm not here for violence. I just want what's mine. And if you don't deliver her, you'll regret it. Trust me." The line went dead. Karim stood there, phone still pressed to his ear, heart pounding like a war drum. Omar watched him carefully. "Sir, we can get more security. Private guards, armored vehicles, whatever you need." Karim shook his head. "Not enough. If this man has connections in law enforcement or government offices, she's not safe anywhere public." Without wasting another second, Karim made a decision that even surprised himself. "Call the jet. We're leaving Kenya today." Omar's eyes widened. "Sir, taking her out of the country without clearance could trigger legal consequences." "I don't care. If I wait for the courts, that man will take her." Hours later, Karim stood in Amira's hospital room. She was awake now, her eyes brighter than before, but still shadowed with fear. Kneeling beside her bed, Karim spoke softly. "Amira, would you like to come with me? Somewhere far away? Somewhere safe?" For the first time, she spoke in more than a whisper. Her voice was raspy, trembling, but clear enough. "Please, don't leave me here." That was all Karim needed. By sunset, Karim, Amira, Omar, and two of Karim's trusted bodyguards boarded the private jet. Amira sat curled up in a blanket in one of the leather seats, staring out the window as the engines roared to life. As the plane lifted off, Karim sat across from her, watching the African landscape shrink below them. But just as he began to exhale, thinking she was finally safe, Omar approached with a grim expression, holding his phone. "Sir, it's urgent." Karim took the phone. One of his legal advisors spoke quickly. "Mr. Al-Fahad, there's a problem. The Kenyan authorities issued an international alert. They're accusing you of kidnapping a minor. If your plane lands in any cooperating country, local police will be waiting." Karim closed his eyes, letting the weight of the words sink in. Kidnapping? After everything he'd done to save her? He looked across at Amira. She had finally fallen asleep, her small face soft and peaceful for the first time since he met her. But the storm was just beginning. With determination hardening his heart, Karim stood and walked toward the cockpit. "Tell the pilot to change course," he ordered. "We're not landing anywhere until I figure out how to fight this." The jet banked hard to the east, disappearing into the night sky, with Karim, Amira, and a future more uncertain than ever before. Hours turned into a blur of flight paths, phone calls, and whispered strategy sessions. Karim's legal team worked non-stop from Dubai, coordinating with international lawyers, trying to block the warrant before it spread. Amira stayed asleep most of the flight, her small body exhausted from trauma and the rush of events. Every time she stirred, Karim sat beside her, whispering soft reassurances. In the cockpit, the pilot delivered the latest update. "Sir, we can land in a private airfield in Oman. No extradition agreements. It's the safest option for now." Karim agreed without hesitation. As the plane touched down, Karim carried Amira down the steps himself. Waiting on the tarmac were 2 vehicles and a private security team he trusted with his life. But even as they drove toward the temporary safe house, Karim knew time was running out. Faisal wouldn't stop. And somewhere out there, lawyers and officials were gathering, calling him a criminal for saving a child's life. 2 days later, sitting in his office at the Dubai headquarters, Karim watched as Omar entered with a folder stamped "Confidential." "Sir, we found her birth records," Omar said quietly. Karim opened the file with trembling hands. There it was, Amira's full name, date of birth, and something else. Her mother had died in childbirth. Her father was not Faisal Okoth. In fact, Faisal wasn't her father at all. Karim's heart sank as he read through the documents. Faisal had purchased guardianship of Amira through forged papers, likely part of a trafficking network. Karim slammed the folder shut, standing abruptly. "She's not going back," he said. "Not to him, not to anyone like him." For the first time in years, Karim Al-Fahad wasn't just fighting for a business deal. He was fighting for a child's future. Weeks later, the charges against Karim were dropped. The truth about Faisal's crimes made headlines across multiple countries. Amira, now slowly recovering, stood holding Karim's hand at the balcony of his Dubai penthouse, staring at the city skyline. Her laughter, still soft but genuine, filled the air as Karim handed her a small stuffed camel, a symbol of her new home. "Do you want to go to school here?" he asked gently. Amira nodded. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Karim realized something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. And for the first time, both of them could finally dream of a future without fear.